Hi everyone, it's Rachael here. Welcome to another episode of the Ditch the Diet podcast. Today's episode is one of my favourites, I think. It's a little bit different to normal in that we are talking about a specific subject that is really, really close to my heart, and that is IBS, or Irritable Bowel Syndrome. I am speaking with blogger Jo Coates, who, in her own words, is all about smashing the poo taboo and speaking openly about her battle with irritable bowel syndrome. Well, she has used and tried absolutely everything under the sun to improve her condition. She talks about how she recovered from IBS, how she manages her IBS, and just kind of has an open discussion about what it's like to live with a bowel condition, because not everyone talks about it, and almost 1 in 4 people actually suffer from irritable bowel syndrome, including myself these days. It's not something that I found very comfortable to talk about in the past. So when I came across Jo and saw her website and saw how incredibly talented she is at getting across the fact that having IBS shouldn't be something we should be hiding, I thought it would be a great idea to get her on the podcast and have a chat about poo. So this one's for you if you struggle with irritable bowel syndrome. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you feel a lot more confident in yourself by the time that this episode is finished. I'll be back at the end to tell you where you can find out more about Jo and how to read her blogs. I'm really looking forward to this chat. I was just reading on your blog there and laughing to myself.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
Of course, thank you so much for asking me.
Oh, that's okay. It's just like I've been following your stuff for so long, and like every time I read something I think, oh my god, this is my life.
Oh, thank you. It's the only way that I can deal, because otherwise IBS can be so gloomy and miserable that if I don't have humour about it, I think I'd actually maybe go a bit crazy.
Yeah, no, me too. I know exactly what you mean. So really, I really wanted to start doing a bit more like chat about this kind of thing, like on the podcast, and just to, because I work with a lot of people that have IBS and things, and a lot of the time they just feel like I used to feel, like nobody feels the same way as you do kind of feeling, and nobody really understands, and I figured if the more we talk about it the better, really. So
I'll completely agree with you.
That was the plan, really. So obviously don't know a huge amount about you, so just we'll just go for it. As much detail as you want. Don't worry about like swear as much as you want, like be as graphic as you want.
Oh, I won't hold back, don't worry.
Oh, that's good. So we'll get started. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Where are you from? The elevator pitch.
I will. Oh, no pressure. So,
No.
My name is Jo Coates. I live just outside of London, and I am a freelance social media manager and writer. And that's quite a recent thing from the beginning of this year. And then alongside that, I have been blogging for yonks and yonks. And originally, my blog kind of started as more of a fashion blog. And then when I was diagnosed with IBS, I thought, actually, why don't I write about this? Because I didn't really know anybody else with IBS, and no one was really talking about it. And I thought, well, if I start writing about it, it's another way to kind of like diarise my feelings. And if someone reads it and kind of feels the same or responds, then I'll feel a bit less alone. And then it kind of spiraled from there. And now I'm all about the poo-chat.
Yay. And I can resonate with that so much. So what we could do is we could start by talking about, before we get into your story with IBS and things, we can maybe have a chat about what exactly it is. And sort of when were you diagnosed? So everyone's different. IBS manifests in completely different ways for pretty much every single person, which is why it's so difficult to manage sometimes.
Yeah.
But before you were diagnosed, or first of all, when were you diagnosed, and before that, what kind of symptoms were you dealing with, and what did your day-to-day life look like?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was around 18 or 19, so that's maybe like 13 or 14 years ago now. And in the lead up to the diagnosis, quite a lot had been going on. So I think maybe in like the year or 6 months before, I'd had really bad tonsillitis on and off every month for about 6 months. And then obviously that I needed a lot of antibiotics for that. And then that resulted in a tonsillectomy. The tonsillectomy didn't go quite as planned, and I had 2 post-operation bleeds, and I had a blood transfusion, and then I was pumped full of more antibiotics because of it. And then at the same time, I was starting uni. My parents were kind of mid-divorce, so we were all moving. And I just think that the combination of all of the antibiotics, which have probably cleared all of the good bacteria from my gut, and just the stress of change and pressure and new starts combined just resulted in like I have IBS-D, so I had constant diarrhea, cramps, bloating, more of that kind of side of things. And then it just got to the point where I was missing out on quite a lot because of it, and I thought, this can't be right, I need to go to the doctor.
And how did you find, how long did that go on for before you sought help?
Well, I can't remember exactly. Probably longer than it should, because I will always put off going to the doctors, because I'm always scared of going to the doctors. But then when I did go to the doctors, I also struggled with that, because I felt like IBS wasn't taken that seriously. And because there is no cure, I kind of felt like I'd been told, it was after tests and keeping a food diary, I'd been told like, you've got IBS, and then it kind of felt like I had to go it alone, and that they didn't know as much as I had wanted them to know. And I appreciate they can't know in great detail about everything, but yeah, it just felt quite tough. And I mean, I'm pretty sure I started by taking all of the medication that they prescribed me, and then found that I didn't really want to rely on tablets, I was taking maybe like 9 tablets a day at some point, and I just thought, I can't do this doesn't feel like the best way to be looking after myself. So I stopped that and then started looking into other options.
Yeah. And so that was like 13, 14 years ago. What sort of treatments did you try before you found something that really worked? Well,
as I said, I tried all of the tablets. I'm pretty sure I was on like Buscopan, peppermint capsules. I even tried a low dose of amitriptyline.
Yeah, the doctor gave me that as well, actually.
Yeah. And in the end, I came off it because I didn't like some of the side effects that I was having. And then a few years ago, I pushed to try, because it's kind of been on and off for the 14 years. And for a while, I stopped eating dairy and lactose, because I found that was a huge trigger. So I cut that out. And then at another point, I cut out gluten, because I thought that was a trigger. That would not be something that I would recommend or ever do again. And I'm eating it again now. And then I pushed to try the low FODMAP diet via a dietitian, and tried really because I just wanted to kind of know what my food triggers were and how much of things I could eat before it became a problem. But really, the thing that's made the biggest difference for me was I did a course of CBT this time last year, I think maybe, and that has been just it's made the biggest difference, because it's completely changed the way, I mean, I worry about everything, and this has changed the way that I think about worrying, and the way I deal and think about my IBS as well. So really, for me, looking after my mental health and small lifestyle changes, like being kind to myself, not burning the candle at both ends, and regular gentle exercise, along with the CBT for my anxiety, have made the biggest changes.
And just to clarify, just for those that are listening that might not know what CBT is, it's cognitive behavioural therapy, is that right?
Yeah. So it's looking at the way that your mind work and your thoughts work, and kind of giving you some tools to reprogram that. Because I always thought that by worrying about something, it just meant it was a good thing. It meant that I was preparing for something, and actually, that's not always the case. Yeah.
And one of my questions was going to be about anxiety surrounding IBS, because for me, like I had never really experienced anxiety before I had problems with my gut. Like I've always been quite an anxious child and just wary, but it was never really like, it didn't affect my day-to-day life until such time that I developed IBS after getting a really bad bout of like bacterial infection in my stomach when I was travelling, and ever since then, you know, the anxiety has manifested so much for me since then. And the more you look at it, the more you realise that actually so many people that have IBS also have anxiety, and sort of the link between what goes on in your digestive system and what can go on in your mind is just like can't be ignored. And I don't know if it was the same for you, and I wanted to bring this up because I think it's something that people don't talk about, and for me, like, nobody talked about it, and it made me feel worse, was the anxiety of going out and not being able to get to a toilet in time. Is that something that you found was...
Yeah, 100% can relate to that last statement you made. Like, I have always been a worrier, and I would worry about anything and everything. And I come from a family of worriers, but I think my anxiety probably spiraled around my IBS because I have IBSD, and sometimes I don't know when a flare is going to happen. And for me, when I get a flare, my stomach kind of gives me like this gurgle, like a deep gurgle. And I
know the feeling.
Like my 2-minute warning. It's like, you've got 2 minutes and you need to find a toilet, otherwise you are going to lose control of your bowels right here, right now. And I think just the fact that I could be out somewhere and there are no toilets, or I could be, I don't know, on the train when I used to commute to work and there are no toilets on that train, like the fear of then having an attack and not knowing what to do or where to go, or just the embarrassment around it. That definitely spiraled my anxiety for sure.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to realise, like, this is just for those that are listening that might feel the same as well, was that my anxiety wasn't really so much surrounding the what if I get ill when I'm out. It was more the embarrassment of what if I get ill when I'm out and about, or on the train, or on a flight, or up a hill in the middle of nowhere. And it was more like the embarrassment, what will other people think? And for me, that's still an ongoing thing for me, but I feel a lot better now than I used to. I couldn't even contemplate leaving the house for a number of months at one point because I was so scared. And it's nice to hear from someone that's worked on that side of things, because I think for me it's like a bit of a vicious circle. If my head feels good, my stomach feels fine, but if my stomach even so much as makes a noise sometimes, I'm like, oh, here we go again.
Oh, for sure. I feel like post CBT I've got a lot more relaxed with how I'm feeling, and because I think when you have IBS, you become so attuned to every little thing that happens in your body. Like if you're a little bit bloated, or you're a bit gassy, or your stomach's gurgling, you kind of immediately, like, I feel like my ears prick up and I'm like, oh, what was that? What does that mean? And it's like, not everything is going to result in a flare. Some things might. And I think my biggest kind of mind shift is that actually having a flare for me used to mean the end of the world. Like I'd have to cancel my plans if I was busy. I'd have to find a toilet. It might be, I'd have to, if I was out, I might have to kind of nip into a pub toilet or something. Whereas actually now I'm trying to be more relaxed about it. So yes, if I go out, I might have a flare, but it's not the end of the world. There are toilets around, kind of, I know what to do to keep calm. And I think working on that and other techniques, like I have to really focus on like deep breathing to calm myself down if I notice that I'm kind of getting a bit wound up.
Mhm.
And I think things like that, and just being more aware of how I feel, but also not letting it kind of rule my mind, has been
Mhm.
really, really key for me and my anxiety.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your blog. What sort of things do you write about in your blog?
Yeah, I would love to. So I mainly blog about IBS these days, and I try to be as honest as possible about my dealings with IBS, as I can, because I think when I was diagnosed, I felt like I was the only one who had IBS.
Mhm.
And no one was talking about it, and I really, really wanted to kind of shout about IBS and say it's okay to say you've got IBS, and that sometimes you might need to poo more than others, and sometimes you might not need to for a while. Like, everyone has to poo, like it's totally normal,
Mhm.
but it's just not really spoken about. It's such a taboo topic. Um,
Yeah.
and by kind of sharing all of my honest, lovely stories, I just feel like it kind of resonates with some people, and it makes them feel like they're less alone. And then there's kind of like there's becoming more of a gut health IBS community, and it's I think it's really important to find someone who is in a similar boat with you, that you can have an honest chat with and not feel embarrassed or kind of ashamed about. So
Mhm.
for me, I mean, my blog just feels like a diary. Like, it's another place that I can just pour out how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. So mainly around IBS and anxiety. But I have a house rabbit, and she will often feature because she's adorable. And I guess about anything that kind of makes me feel full of joy.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I've been reading some of your stories, and you recently started a sort of separate entity called Tales from the Toilet. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have. It's so Tales from the Toilet is a monthly newsletter. Um, and it's something I've wanted to do for ages, but my anxiety probably stopped it, because the idea of kind of creating something on a regular schedule and sending it out to people just used to fill me with dread. And then I thought, stop being so silly, you can do this. Let's make it happen.
Mhm.
So it's a monthly newsletter. I sent my first one, beginning of this month for IBS Awareness Month, and it's like an honest letter from me to whoever receives it about living with IBS. But what I kind of want to fill it with is humorous tales. So I have a little section in the newsletter called Bored on the Bog, which is like a section where I give you an idea of something to do when you are stuck on the toilet, completely bored, having a flare, or doing whatever. And it's also a place where I want to share the funny things that have happened to me with IBS, because for me, I have to talk about it with humour, because I think it just makes it easier to deal with that way. Like, if I can't laugh at some of the situations I've been in, I would cry.
Yeah, same here. I was gonna ask you if you could share one of these moments, these sort of moments that have maybe started as being sort of horrible moments that you can look at with sort of more humour nowadays.
Oh yeah. My favourite one is I was on a commute home, so I was on my train, and from London to where I live, the train I was on probably took about 40 to 50 minutes, and there's no toilets on it. And it was post rush hour, so it wasn't as busy. But I remember I got on the train, feeling okay, and then I felt like the stomach bloat had come on. So I had to do that classic thing of popping my top jean button, which I do regularly anyway. But then the bloating kind of became quite excruciating, and the cramp started, and I got that kind of 2 minute warning gurgle. And I thought, no, 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 this now is not the time, body, kind of control yourself. And I got in such a fluster because I was so panicked that I would have to, I don't know, get off the train and try and work out what station had a toilet, or whether I'd even make it home. That I remember I had my jeans like fully undone. I was kind of crying floods of tears, calling both it's my husband, but my boyfriend at the time, and my mum, trying to see if someone could pick me up from my end end of the line station to get me home in time because I just wasn't sure I was going to make it. And I remember I couldn't control my feelings. I let it all overwhelm me. I was in such a state. I managed to make it the train journey without losing control of my bowel, shall we say. But it was one of the worst journeys I've ever had. And I think in that moment, I was so consumed with my anxiety that I couldn't bring myself back down to like a calm state. And I remember my boyfriend picked me up at the station, whizzed home, and that sense of relief when I got into my own toilet was, well, it was something else. But I think now I can look back at that journey and even though it's not particularly funny, like I feel like I have to laugh about it because I was all right at the end. It was just horrific at the time.
Yeah, gosh, I have so many memories, similar memories to that, honestly. I read that one on your blog and I was just sitting there like almost crying with laughter because I thought it's not funny at the time, but when you look back you think, oh my goodness, like I've been there so many times. So many times.
Another really good one for you is I had my hen do maybe 2 years ago now, and it wasn't a flare, but before events and things like that, I get what I like to call the nervy poos. And we were in maybe 2 different cabs on the way to my hen do in London, and I remember just saying to my friend, "Oh my God, we're going to have to stop. I need to find a toilet." Friends, I mean, all of my friends know that I have IBS. I was like, my stomach's doing something, and we're stuck in traffic, and I don't know if I can wait it out, and I don't want to kind of wait it out and see what happens. So I remember I dragged one of my friends out of the car with me, and I mean, bear in mind, I was like head to toe, sequins, glitter, all dressed up as the bride to be. We ran into like the nearest Nando's. And I'm so sorry, I'm about to go on my hen do, but I really need to use the bathroom. Is that okay? They were like, yeah. And then I remember I had to go down to the bathroom and I had the nervy poos, and it was just so, I had to laugh about it afterwards because I was like, this is so typical of my body that I'm really excited and also nervous about a hen do because it was all a surprise. But the hilarity of like being in a Nando's dressed up head to toe glitter ball at about 7 o'clock on a Saturday night, needing to go to the toilet, it was too funny. And just all of my friends being like, yeah, we understand, we know, we'll get it, we'll wait here.
Oh, it is so nice though when the people around you just get it, and it took me a long time to open up, and I think communicating it with other people has really helped me. You know, saying to people, look, this is what might happen. And then it's almost, I think it's getting a bit easier nowadays. I think people are talking about it a lot more.
Yeah, I really agree with you. And I think for me, being open and honest about it has been one of the biggest things because it makes me feel a bit freer. Like the more people that know, brilliant. It means I don't have to explain myself. And I remember maybe when it all first started, some people weren't as kind, and they were like, if I said, oh no, I can't do that, I've got IBS, or my IBS used to rule my life a bit more back then, so I would say no to a lot more things. But sometimes people wouldn't be as understanding, and you know, they'd use that line, well, oh, you know, it's just IBS, it's just a bit of an upset stomach. Whereas actually, in reality, for me, no, it's not just IBS, it's not just an upset stomach. Like, there are so many other symptoms that come with it, like the fatigue I get after having a flare or a bad IBS day. Like, I'm constantly tired. So actually, for me, saying no to things is really important because I can't go out every night, and I you know, I have to keep an evening to myself or a day at the weekend to myself just to kind of like rebalance and recenter and kind of get my groove back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget or don't know about the other symptoms, like you say, the tiredness and the fatigue, and not and you know, just think it's an upset stomach. And I used to get a lot of that as well. Like, sometimes my friends used to get frustrated with me when I would say, I'm not coming out tonight, or I need to do this, I'm just absolutely exhausted. And it's having that awareness that it's not just about being stuck on the toilet all the time or not being able to go. It's everything else that goes along with it, and it's exhausting. And sometimes, like for me especially, sometimes it's like it's my mind races for so long. It's like yeah, it's like I just need to sleep for about 2 days solid.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think I'm more okay now with saying to people, look, I kind of need to take tonight for myself. But I want to see you and I want to do something. Just today's not been a good day. My anxiety's a bit all over the place. I'm not feeling great. Kind of need to take it to myself. But then at the same time, like my mum is really good at this. She always says to me, like, is this you not wanting to do it, or is this you worried about like your IBS spiraling? Kind of just check in and see if I'm kind of still putting my IBS first, or whether like kind of checking in with actually, do I want to do this? Am I putting it off because of my IBS?
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah. I wanted to talk to you about what it would be, if you could go back to your sort of 18, 19-year-old self. Now, for me personally, I wish I could go back and say so many things, because it took me so long to get to where I am now. I was about the same age. I was about 19. I'm going to be 35 this year. And I would say, like, only within the last 3-4 years, it's got to a point where I feel like my life is almost what it was like before. If I still worry, like if I know I'm going to be away from the house for like an entire day, or I'm not entirely sure where I'm going or what's going to be there, or where the nearest toilet might be, like all these things that still go through my head, but they don't stop me from doing things anymore. And if they do, I don't beat myself up about it, whereas before I would spend the entire day telling myself that it was a total failure because I let IBS rule my life, whereas now it's just a case of, oh, I'm having a bad day, I don't have to go out today. And I wish I could go back to that 19-year-old person and say, look, you're not a weirdo. This is like, there are other people out there that feel the same way as you do, and here is the fast track version of how to get to where you are now when you're 35.
Agree.
What would you say to your 18-year-old self back then?
I think I would say, well, first of all, I would say be kind to yourself a lot more. I think I was so hard on myself for a number of reasons, but I just think listening to your body and then giving it what it needs is so important, and I definitely didn't do that. Like I would tell myself to go easy, be gentle on myself, not beat myself up if I was having a bad day with my IBS, and just to take things a bit easier. And then I would also say, I think I would tell myself to kind of push harder at the doctors for a response that I really needed to hear. And I probably would have wanted to kind of speed up my entire process. And I think realised that how much my anxiety was linked to my IBS at a much earlier age, because it took me like 13 years before I got to the point where my anxiety was so out of control I had to do something about it. If I kind of realised how interlinked the mind and the gut were a lot earlier on, I could have done something really beneficial back then, to be in a better place.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. There are lots of people out there diagnosed with IBS that don't know what to do, that are feeling stressed, anxious, scared to eat. That was something that I struggled with. I actually got just scared to eat, and I knew that if I didn't eat, there wouldn't be anything in my stomach to cause problems. So I went through a period of just not eating, which obviously is really counterproductive. What advice would you give to someone that's maybe just been diagnosed, or maybe was diagnosed 10, 15 years ago, and feels like we did, like feeling stressed, anxious and worried that it'll never go away? Like, one of the things I used to think was, I wish I just had something that had a treatment. Like, give me an illness that's actually recognised, that someone can give me a pill for and get rid of,
Yeah. I think there are several things that I would say to someone who's kind of been newly diagnosed or has IBS and doesn't really know what to do. And I think the first thing is talking to people, because for me, I found it such a relief. So I think there are loads of people, well, there are loads more people these days online who have IBS or gut health issues and want to talk about it. And there are loads of lovely communities and bloggers that are more than happy to talk, which is great. And I'm definitely one of them. I will forever talk about poo if you get me started. I think it's also important, and I know this can be tricky, but I think if you're working in a job where sometimes your IBS might impact how you're feeling and what you're doing, I think it's really important that you, if you're able, that you can tell a colleague or your boss or someone in HR what IBS is, what it looks like for you, and the best way that you can manage it together. Because I think when I was in full-time work, I was really lucky in that I had several bosses who were really understanding. So if I was having a terrible day where I couldn't leave the house and get on the train because I couldn't be that far away from my bathroom, I could stay at home and work in the comfort of my own home and know that if I needed to use the toilet, I could do so without feeling stressed or embarrassed or all over the place about it. So I think telling people is really important. And then I would also say, like, you have to kind of put yourself and your health and mental health first and kind of look at what you can do to be kind to yourself and try to do nice things, even if it's a small thing, like, I don't know, just going out for a little 15-minute walk just for some gentle exercise to get everything moving. Or, I mean, my favourite is to have a bubble bath. Like, I would have a bath every night if I could. I find them really relaxing and really comforting. And I think indulging in those nice little moments, as well as being good for your health and making you feel better, if you do have some of the symptoms, like, it might help. Like, if I have cramps or I'm bloated, like, a bath for me is like the best kind of relief. So I will always do that. And I would also say, I think, just don't give up. Like, keep going to the doctors until you get your answer. But also, I think you have to look at the bigger picture. When I first started, I was so focused on food and what I was eating and what food was triggering kind of what symptom. And I think for me, that's only a small part of my IBS. Like, it's definitely about my lifestyle as a whole, what I do, how my mental health is, and it's also tied in that I kind of have to take all of that into account as well, and not beat myself up so much when I'm feeling low. Because 14 years on, like, I still get flares every now and then, and sometimes I don't know what's triggered them. It could be something, or it could be stress or anxiety, or I don't know, I've got a deadline and I'm worried about it. But I think I'm learning how to take it in my stride rather than get so wound up about it.
Yeah.
Like, having IBS can suck, sure, but I'm trying to find, like, the best way to deal with it. And for me, talking about it and laughing about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's really helped me just reading your blog. So for those that are listening that want to read more about what you do, where are the best places to find you?
Yeah, so my blog is jocoates.co.uk, so you can come and find me there. And then I am on Twitter and Instagram, both as @jocoatesy. And I'm always happy for anyone to kind of come and say hi, talk about their IBS. Like, I'm more than happy for that.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I'll put all the links in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to find out more, just scroll down on whatever you're listening to and just click on the links there. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. And it's so refreshing to just be so open and honest about poo.
So there we have it, a very frank and open discussion about poo. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope it has opened your eyes to what it's like to live with IBS if you don't live with it, and maybe perhaps you know someone who does. Or if you have IBS, I hope it has made you laugh a little bit, because I'm sure you understand some of the stories, and I'm sure you have felt the same at some point in your life as well. I think it's really important that we talk about this because it is quite a lonely place to be if you do struggle with a condition like this. It can be embarrassing and it can feel like you're on your own, but please reach out to either one of us if you do have any questions, and I'll make sure that I link to Jo's blog in the show notes, so just scroll down and have a look. I really do recommend that you go and have a read of some of her stories, because it really is fascinating and interesting, and it will make you laugh as well and lighten the mood around poop. So thank you for listening. I'll be back again next Thursday with another episode of the Ditch the Diet podcast. Until then, thank you for listening. Please don't forget to leave a review on iTunes, 5-star review please, and a few words. It really make a big difference to how many people actually are able to listen to the podcast. So it'll only take a couple of minutes, and I would really appreciate it.